Welcome back. This weekend, Long Island's own Javon Belcher, linebacker for the Kansas City Chiefs, he fatally shot his girlfriend, then took his own life. Belcher and his girlfriend, Cassandra Perkins, reportedly owned guns and used them recreationally. Police say he turned one of those guns on Perkins, shooting her 9 times at home. The couple shared with their 3-month-old daughter, now an orphan. But then the 25-year-old drove to Kansas City's Arrowhead Stadium, thanked both his coach and his general manager for believing him, and then turned the gun on himself as they watched in horror as he took his own life. Coach Romeo Crennel, he made the tough decision. Well, he suggested to play the game, and the league as well as the team supported that decision, and they played yesterday. But the occasion, it was marked by only a moment of silence.
Join the Chiefs organization in a moment of silence to remember all victims of domestic violence and their families.
There was even shots of not just the coach there, Romeo Crennel, but also some of Belcher's former teammates who lay crying on the sidelines. And there was a question about whether or not this game should have even been played, and I think a healthy debate about that as well. But afterwards, Brady Quinn, a Chiefs quarterback, he made some very eloquent remarks about how we as a society can attempt to maybe listen a little bit more closely to what's going on and the people around us.
The one thing is hopefully people can, try to take away that, I guess, the relationships they have with people. I know when it happened, I was sitting in my head thinking, what could I have done different? When you ask someone how they're doing, do you really mean it? When you answer someone back, how are you doing? Are you really telling them the truth? We live in a society of social networks and Twitter pages and Facebook, and that's fine and stuff, but we have contact with our work associates, our family, our friends, and it seems like half the time we're more preoccupied with our phone and other things going on instead of the actual relationships we have in front of us. And hopefully people can learn from this and try to actually figure out if someone's battling something, deeper on the inside than what they may be revealing on a day-to-day basis.
After that shooting and after the game, attention soon turned to an on-air editorial made by sportscaster Bob Costas, made during halftime of the Sunday night game.
In the aftermath of the nearly unfathomable events in Kansas City, that most mindless of sports cliches was heard yet again. Something like this really puts it all in perspective. You want some actual perspective on this? Well, a bit of it comes from the Kansas City-based writer Jason Whitlock, with whom I do not always agree, but who today said it so well that we may as well just quote or paraphrase from the end of his article. Our current gun culture, Whitlock wrote, ensures that more and more domestic disputes will end in the ultimate tragedy, and that more convenience store confrontations over loud music coming from a car will leave more teenage boys bloodied and dead. Handguns do not enhance our safety. They exacerbate our flaws, tempt us to escalate arguments, and bait us into embracing confrontation rather than avoiding it. In the coming days, Javon Belcher's actions and their possible connection to football will be analyzed. Who knows? But here, wrote Jason Whitlock, is what I believe. If Javon Belcher didn't possess a gun, he and Cassandra Perkins would both be alive today.
Okay. I like Bob Costas. I think what he said at the Olympics about a moment of silence not being recognized, so for the anniversary of the Munich Games here, was spot on. I don't necessarily even disagree with what he said there. In fact, I agree with more of it than I don't. I'm conflicted, though. Right time, right place for that. This was on the evening game, the Eagles-Cowboys. I'll start with you, Anthony. You got any problem with what he said?
I just don't think you should say on national television that unfortunately that tragedy would not have happened if he didn't have a gun, because candidly we don't know that, and I think it's his responsibility to be responsible about it. But it goes to a larger issue of handguns and getting into the hands of people that shouldn't have them. Now,
but before we even get into the debate about gun control and what it should or shouldn't look like, does a football game halftime show, is that the right forum, or is that a totally suitable forum for this kind of a conversation?
I don't think so. And probably most of the people that are watching it are card-carrying members of the NRA, so they probably didn't appreciate that very much. It is an important conversation to have. I just disagree with doing it at halftime.
Andrew?
I don't see what the downside is of doing it. I don't see what the big aggrievement is, that I had to listen for 60 seconds to an opinion that I disagreed with, and people are yelling and screaming about this today? I mean, is that where we are with the politics in this
time out
country?
for only one thing. You and I both we've talked about this before, we're more in line with Bob Costas than not. What if Bob Costas last night instead said, you know what, if only Cassandra was armed with her own gun, and if more people carried guns in them at all times, she would have been able to shoot him before he got off 9 shots on
We
her.
would be having a discussion about the policies of gun control.
We would be talking about the recklessness of an anchor taking a position.
We'd be talking about statistics that show that what he said was incorrect. We would have example after example that show that what he said in your hypothetical is incorrect.
You would have taken a problem with the form in which you would have said something that you took issue with.
It's possible.
It's probable.
I disagree with you, because you know what? It's not. It's a conversation, and we're really at this place in America right now where we can't even have a conversation when it's on the tip of everybody's tongue.
Well,
when you're going to reach an audience that you might otherwise not be able to reach.
It was perfect. It needed to be said, even if you don't agree with it. It provoked people to think about it. He took some responsibility as a journalist. If it had been the other way, he had said stuff I had disagreed with, I would feel the same way about the notion that you got to talk about this stuff.
Time out, though. If the analogy I just gave to Andrew, if he said, hey, she should have been packing heat.
I would have roundly condemned the views, but the notion that he said it when the moment was appropriate would have been as correct for him as it would have been for me.
I know you're in the fourth estate now, like the rest
You're
of us.
killing me
I
here.
am. But
You're
I am
killing
telling
me.
you, you know as an elected official, instinctively, there are times and places to get into certain things. After 9/11, everybody shelved politics for the first 48, 72 hours.
If you're right about that, football games are never the time to talk about anything except beer, cigarettes, and speed. He changed. Whatever. He changed the conversation at a moment when the conversation needed to be changed.
We've gotten to a
Good
place
for him.
where the news headlines that generate the policy decisions that we have to make are all of a sudden untouchable zones for talking about that very policy. Or
Says who? I'm talking about not the subject matter. I'm talking about the platform.
Think back to after Aurora, when everybody was saying, "Oh my goodness, you can't talk about a tragedy like this in terms of gun control," out of respect for the victims.
But we did.
But we were in the minority, and most of the people who objected to that conversation were saying it's the wrong time and the wrong place for doing this, out of respect to the victims. We have to get serious with the problems that we have in this country, and when those problems present themselves, that's the time to talk about them.
What he said. Listen.
I think we have to be talking about domestic violence because, you know what, he was a real big guy, and I doubtful that even if she had a gun, we don't know. We don't know the situation.
That was the hard part, because the players clearly felt for him, because of their relationship with him, he actually murdered somebody.
You know what? It was interesting. I listened to what a lot of the players said and also members in the league, and I fully expected everybody to be talking about what kind of a great guy he is. A lot of players said, while I don't know all the situations, at the end of the day, he's a murderer. And he left an orphan and he killed his wife. I was surprised how many players were aware of it, how many players brought up the subject of domestic violence, because it's a huge issue. When you look at percentages compared to the general population, how much is happening in these leagues.
That's why the moment of silence was for the victims of domestic violence, not for a fallen.
You think they should have played the game, by the way?
It's up to them.
Yeah. Okay. I mean, remember, obviously, I'm not connoting the two, but after JFK was killed, they went on and they played. And Pete Rozelle said for the rest of his career, that was his one biggest regret, that they played that soon. And I'm not saying that a national head of state and that, but in this particular case, the coach and the general manager were feet from the guy when he blew his brains out. And they pplayed the game.
But if the players were able to
24,
play,
36 hours later.
If the players were able to play, if they felt like it did them some good, I'm fine with that. I actually had more of a problem when they decided to play the Giants game right after Hurricane Sandy, because I thought you'd have trouble getting fans and police resources there. So,
I agree with you. I just thought it was an interesting question. All right. We jump to a break here, but when we come back, an interesting situation, a story we all know about the bad blood and that bitter fight between Susan Rice, who is being rumored here to be a possible nominee for Secretary of State, and Senator John McCain. Could this be a lot more about a personal bone to pick than Benghazi, and what does it say about where we are in America right now if a personal gripe can grind D.C. to a halt? We'll explain. Stay with us.